Ukitake shouldn't have been able to come back at all. His soul was supposed to end up in hell, not a second life. But something happened during the Blood War that broke his fate completely, and it's the reason he could come back remembering everything. Shinigami souls don't usually get a second life, especially not captains. Their reiyatsu is so dense, they're almost always sent to hell instead of reincarnating. Ukitake should have been no different, but he was hiding something that changed everything. For centuries, his body wasn't being sustained by his own soul alone. It was being kept alive by Mimihagi, the Soul King's right arm, ever since he was a sickly child whose parents prayed for a miracle. That's the loophole that makes everything else in this scenario possible. Because of this, during the 1,000-year Blood War, when Yuawak invades the royal palace and forces his way toward the Soul King, Mimihagi leaves Ukitake's body completely, trying to stabilize the collapsing worlds. And that changes everything. Much of Ukitake's spiritual mass was tied to Mimihagi in the first place. Losing that connection strips away a huge portion of what made his soul so dense. By the time Ukitake actually dies later in the war, his soul isn't the same overwhelming captain-class presence anymore. It's closer to something ordinary now, light enough to slip back into the natural cycle, instead of getting dragged down to hell. That's exactly the kind of gap in Kubo's lore that lets this whole theory breathe, because we never actually get shown what happens to Ukitake's soul after Mimihagi disappears. Ukitake isn't born remembering anything. If he woke up already knowing everything, the story would collapse before it even started. Instead, the memories come back slowly through spiritual echoes. As a kid, he keeps having the same strange dream, a white haori he's never owned, and a name that isn't his, Jushiro, whispered by voices he doesn't recognize. None of it makes sense yet. It's only when he starts crossing paths with familiar reiyatsu that the pieces finally click into place. When he meets Rukia, something stirs in the back of his mind, a flicker tied to her execution sentence he can't quite explain. When he stands near Shunsui, it hits all at once: conversations, battles, promises they made decades ago. And when he finally steps into Serete itself, everything comes flooding back, 2,000 years of memory, crashing into a body that was never built to hold it. This isn't a nostalgia trip, it's a war replaying in his head, one he already lived through and already died in. For years, he just feels like something's wrong with him, long before he understands why. For the first time in his life, his body isn't broken. His illness was never spiritual, it was physical. A body that failed him early, kept alive only by Mimihagi. A new body means new organs. The coughing up blood mid-battle stops. The illness disappears completely. Ukitake grows up healthy, and that alone makes this life feel like a second chance. But he doesn't get to keep his old power. Memories aren't the same thing as strength. He remembers Kido perfectly, how his swordsmanship used to flow, and how flash step should feel. His soul just doesn't have the reiyatsu to pull any of it off yet. Picture an elderly martial artist, reincarnated with all his knowledge intact, but none of the muscle memory rebuilt. He knows exactly what to do, and still can't do it. That doesn't slow him down for long. He already mastered Kido and swordsmanship once, centuries ago. Most academy students spend decades just learning to mold their spiritual pressure. Ukitake already figured that out a lifetime ago. Once his reiyatsu starts developing again, his growth snowballs. It doesn't feel like starting from scratch. It feels like remembering how to ride a bike, except the bike is captain-level combat mastery. His Zanpakuto is where things get complicated. Sogyo no Kodawari belonged to his previous spiritual body, and that body is gone now. When he's eventually assigned a new Asauchi, it doesn't just transform back into his old sword. His soul is still the same person underneath it all, same ideals, and same core personality, which means the new blade starts evolving in a strikingly similar direction the more he trains with it. Not an exact copy, more like a successor, carrying the same philosophy through slightly different abilities. Rukia notices something is off first. She just can't explain it yet. There's something oddly familiar about this random human. The calm smile, the habit of putting everyone else's needs before his own. Slowly, she starts realizing just how much he reminds her of her old captain. Urahara pieces it together differently, scientifically. The moment Ukitake casually mentions classified information no ordinary human should know, Urahara understands this isn't coincidence. That's enough to send him down a rabbit hole, investigating reincarnation itself, something he never had a reason to look into before. Aizen doesn't feel any of this. He's fascinated, but purely from a scientific standpoint. A human soul remembering an entire past life would prove something extraordinary about souls themselves, something that could reshape everything he believes about spiritual evolution. Considering how obsessed he already is with transcending the natural order, he doesn't want Ukitake dead. He wants him captured and studied. Shunsui doesn't believe any of it. Not at first. It sounds insane. But then Ukitake brings up memories only the two of them ever shared. Old conversations, battles neither of them ever told anyone about, promises made in silence. Slowly, painfully, Shunsui accepts the impossible truth. His best friend found a way back to him. Quick pause. Shout out to Ozur for subscribing. If you want to be next, comment, I subbed. Let's continue. His friends know he's back now, but Soul Society has no idea. He doesn't know how it all ends, because he died before the war was over, so there's still plenty left for him to navigate. But he knows Aizen inside and out. He knows the shape of the Arrancar threat, the existence of Hueco Mundo, the truth about Mimihagi, and eventually, the threat still waiting, Yuawak and the Vondenreich, long before anyone else in Soul Society has reason to suspect them. That knowledge won't let him solo every villain alone, but it lets him start shifting the board, years ahead of schedule. His growth maps onto the story he already knows. During the Substitute Shinigami arc, he's barely more than spiritually aware, still catching up on his own memories. By the time Soul Society is under threat, having formally begun training, he's around seated officer rank. Through the fight against the Arancars, his Reiatsu grows enough to reach lieutenant strength. By fake Karakura Town, he's closing in on low captain territory, finally able to fight without his old body betraying him. And by the time the 1,000-year Blood War arrives again, he's fully reclaimed captain-level strength. Except this time, he already knows how it went wrong, who he'll lose, and what it cost him the first time around. The ending changes, but not the way you'd expect. Ukitake doesn't suddenly become strong enough to solo Yuawak. He is still a god-tier threat. No amount of extra training changes that. The real difference isn't power, it's preparation. He remembers Mimihagi's importance now. He warns Urahara, Shunsui, and even Ichibei, all of it, well before the first Quincy arrow is fired. Countermeasures for the Bankai stealing medallions are already underway. Mimihagi is already protected, long before Yuawak ever gets close. Half the Gote 13 don't get slaughtered before anyone even understands what's happening. The 1,000-year Blood War becomes something else entirely, a genuinely even fight, all because one captain refused to let history repeat itself. He's not an overpowered reincarnation, steamrolling through every villain. He's just a man who already lived through tragedy once, already lost everyone he cared about, and who's now, quietly, trying to make sure it doesn't happen again, even if it means starting his entire life over, from absolutely nothing. Ukitake got a second chance. He's spending it trying to protect the people he already lost once. Aizen gets a second chance too. Same intelligence, same patience, and the same ability to see 3 moves ahead of everyone in the room. But something about him doesn't add up this time, not the way you'd expect. He still moves like a man with a plan. He still calculates every outcome before anyone else even sees the board. But this plan doesn't look anything like the last one. And by the time anyone realizes what he's actually building, it might already be too late to stop it. What that actually looks like is the entire next video. Go find out.